That was then, this is now, chapter 10. We stayed there at the hospital until the doctor could talk to us. He couldn't tell us much. Physically, Eminem would recover, but mentally, will he always be like he is now? Kathy said. She had really been brave. No crying, no hysterics. Only by the tense, tight way she was ripping the hem out of her shirt was she showing how bad she was shook. The doctor replied, I have no way of knowing. He might get better, or he may have lost his mind forever. Either way, I don't believe he'll ever be completely the same. LSD is a powerful drug. People react to it differently. If these kids would only I tuned him out. I won't listen to sermons. Besides, I was hacked off at the doctor. He shouldn't be saying things like that. He should be saying that Eminem would be fine, that tomorrow morning he would be the same again. Couldn't he see how what he was saying was tearing Mr. Carlson to pieces? Couldn't he see what it was doing to Kathy? What kind of a doctor was he anyway? I want to drive you home, I said to Kathy. She shook her head. I don't want to go home. I want to stay here. Kathy, I want you to go home, Mr. Carlson said. You can't do anything here, and I want you to be with your mother when she hears about this. Eminem will be asleep for a few hours. I'm going home in an hour or so. Wait until I get there before you tell your mother. His voice broke. What are we going to tell her? Come on, I said, putting my arm around Kathy, guiding her to the car. Wait a minute, Mr. Carlson said. Brian, I want to tell you how much I appreciate all you've done. I'm really proud of you, son. That was the first time any man had ever called me son without making me mad. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded to him and gave Kathy a squeeze. In the car, Kathy broke down and cried. I drove to the park and stopped. I held her while she cried. She was almost hysterical. I was crying too. I couldn't stand seeing her hurt like that. I just couldn't stand it. Don't cry like this, baby, I said. My voice was shaking. Kathy, don't. It won't do any good. Oh my God, she sobbed. What if he's lost his mind forever? He was such a sweet kid, the sweetest damn kid in the whole world. This was the first time I had ever heard her swear. I tried to think about this fact, to focus on something like that before I lost control and became hysterical too. He's going to be all right, I said. He'll be just like before. No, he won't. Kathy was trying to stop crying now. He won't ever be the same. This set her off crying again. My shirt front was soaked clear through. She just hung on to me and cried while I patted her head. Finally, she sat up. I love you so much, Brian, she said. I don't want, I don't know what I'd have done without you. I love you too, baby, I said. This was getting easier to say. Don't worry about what the doctor said. He's one of those hippie haters. Eminem will be okay. I know it. I'd better go home now, Kathy said. I have to be there when Mama hears. Oh, this is just going to kill her. I let her out at her house, but I didn't go in. I figured this was a family matter, and I wasn't a member of the family yet. I was surprised to see how late it was when I got home. Mom was asleep. I went into my room and laid down without bothering to turn off the light. Mark wasn't home yet. I was tired. I felt empty and drained. Nothing can wear you out like caring about people. I was tired. Yet I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep. I closed my eyes, but I kept seeing pictures. All these people were spinning around in my head. Mark and Charlie and Mike and Angela, Kathy and Eminem and Mr. Carlson and Tim and Curly Shepherd. Life had seemed so simple once. Now it suddenly seemed so complicated. I could remember a time when my only worry had been paying Charlie the $3 I owed him. Things used to be simple, and now they weren't. I wanted a cigarette bad. I half heartedly searched my pockets, but I knew I didn't have any. Then I remembered Mark's spare carton and rolled off the bed and reached under his mattress. I felt something strange and pulled it out. It was a long cylinder like thing. I unscrewed one end and all these pills came rolling out. I am not dumb by any means. I have never used drugs except for a couple of tries with grass, but I knew what they'd look like. I looked at this bunch of pills. There were hundreds of them, and it was like a machine in my head went click, 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 and it came up with an answer I didn't want. Mark was selling this stuff. This was way too many pills for anybody to have if he was just taking them himself. And besides, I would have noticed something different about Mark if he had been taking them. You can't use drugs and not show it. I knew too many kids who were users not to know that. Mark was selling. Mark was a pusher. That was where he was getting this money. That was why he had known about the hippie house. That was why they had known him. That was why he had known where to look for Eminem. Eminem, Kathy. Eminem was in the hospital and maybe he was messed up for life and Mark was selling the stuff that made him that way. Maybe this wasn't LSD, but it was a step in that direction. And God only knows what all Mark had been selling. I thought about that blonde, dead looking chick and about Eminem screaming about spiders and Kathy half hysterical with grief. I thought about Mr. Carlson and the bitter doctor, and the whole mess was swirling around in my head, and it felt like it would burst wide open. When I thought about the cause of all this misery, I became very cool. I very calmly called the cops. Eminem had lost his mind, and Kathy was hurting, and I did something about it. Then I sat down on a chair in the front room and waited. It seemed only a minute later when Mark came in. "Hey, still up?" he said. Then he stopped. "What's the matter?" "Brian, you look awful. What is it?" I held out the cylinder. "Oh," Mark said after a pause. "You found them, huh? Well, don't worry, buddy. I don't take them. I have a good enough time like I am." "Just how are you, anyway?" I said. "What?" Mark said, confused. "Eminem is in the hospital. Acid trip. They think he may have lost his mind." "Man, that is awful. That poor kid." Then he looked at me. "Brian, don't look at me like that. I said I don't take them. Don't you believe me?" "I believe you," I said dully. "We needed the money, you know. I tried getting a job, but with my police record, nobody'd hire me. Then I met this guy on the ribbon. He set me up. I figure I don't have to take it to sell it. So what's the worry?" "Eminem," I began, but I was too tired, too numb to talk. "Is that what's bugging you? Listen, I didn't sell Eminem anything. He got it from somebody else. Look at Brian, they're going to get it from somebody if they want it. So why can't I make some money? I never forced it on anybody. I never tried to talk to somebody into using drugs so I could make a buck." He could have talked all night and I wouldn't have changed my mind. This was wrong. For the first time in years, I thought about the golden eyed cowboy who had been Mark's father. Was Mark a throwback? To what? I wondered tiredly why I had never seen it before. Mark had absolutely no concept of what was right and what was wrong. He didn't obey any laws because he couldn't see that there were any laws. Right and wrong, they didn't matter to Mark because they were just words. "Brian, what is it?" Mark cried suddenly. "Listen, if it bugs you that much, I'll quit. I'll stop selling if you don't like it. Shoot, I never thought it would bother you. I sort of thought you knew about it." "Don't drag me into this," I thought. "Don't try to make me out to be blind just because you are." Aloud, I said, "I called the cops." And I felt as if I was talking in my sleep. Mark went white. "What?" he said softly, disbelievingly. "What did you say?" We could already hear the siren. "Brian, you know what something like this would do to me with my record. Brian, tell me you're lying." Mark was pleading desperately. I thought maybe he would run for it, but he didn't. He just sat down in a chair opposite me. He was white and his eyes were black with a rim of gold around them. He looked the way he had when he had been clobbered with that bottle. "Brian," he said quietly, like he was trying hard to understand, like he was totally confused, like he thought maybe I would answer in a foreign language. "Why are you doing this to me, buddy? Brian, just tell me." I couldn't tell him. I didn't know. The police arrived, and of course, Mom woke up. She didn't know what was going on. She could only stand helpless in the kitchen doorway while the police questioned me, rounded up the drugs, and slapped handcuffs on Mark. They advised Mark of his right to remain silent, and he did. He just stood there, quivering, watching me, while I told the cops the things that would put him behind bars for years. Then a cop said, "Let's go, kid." And it seemed to dawn on Mark what was happening. He looked quickly from the cops to me and cried, "My God, Brian, you're not going to let them take me to jail?" Didn't he know I had just put him there? The cop jerked Mark around and shoved him out the door. Suddenly, it was deadly quiet, just the distant siren and Mom's quiet sobbing. I went into the bathroom and threw up. I was sick.